Hey everyone, Eon of Dreams here. I know it's been a while, but I've had a few problems in real life and with my computer that I've finally just gotten fixed, so I can finally go back to making videos now, with a topic that you may hopefully find as interesting as I do. Though I should probably warn before I go into this video that I only know this topic to sort of an amateur level. I've only just gotten into it, so do take this with a grain of salt, because I'm not an expert, though I have looked it up and I found it fascinating, so I thought I may as well share it with you all. For those who know me, I am an occultist, and as I said before, I only just got into it recently. And one of the biggest names in occultism is Aleister Crowley, also known by many others as the wickedest man in the world. Crowley himself is a very polarizing figure. He is undeniably an occult genius to those who have studied him, but his works may seem confusing to the uninitiated because they were not meant to be read by everyone and are mired in symbolism. This is not surprising considering he was also a member of the Golden Dawn, which was a secret society that practiced ritual and ceremonial magic. This is also coupled with Aleister's more trollish personality aspects. He often liked to disturb the fragile disposition and glass-jawed, which prevented a lot of people from actually understanding him and giving fodder to his critics. Not that he cared, of course. But it can make examining the man somewhat difficult, so if you do research him, you may have to do some fact-checking depending on what you hear. What I'm here to talk about was part of the Thelema religion, a religion founded by Aleister Crowley himself, and it is the part that refers to the concept of Aeons in the religion. Aeons can refer to at least a couple of things. It can either refer to a type of deity in the Gnostic religion, or it can refer to an era or long expanse of time. The latter definition is what we're going to examine here, but both definitions do have some relevance to Thelema. Crowley believed that the spiritual development of mankind can, as of this moment, be defined by 3 eons or ages. What I'm planning to do here is, after defining the eons, see where Equestria fits on this scale. The first eon is the Eon of Isis, characterized by the matriarchal worship of the goddess and nature primarily. Here the goddesses are really the only ones being worshipped, as well as the moon and the earth recognized as being part of the feminine divine. This eon reached its zenith in about 2400 BC. It is named after the Egyptian mother goddess Isis, who is the mother of Horus, as well as the cunning goddess of magic. The second eon is the Eon of Osiris. It is here that the gods come into the picture, along with a more gradual shift to a more patriarchal worship of them. Here the sun and the sky were recognized as part of the masculine divine, but there was another innovation as well, and it was the concept of death, which was finally explored in this eon. In the Eon of Isis, death was something that more or less just happened. It was sad and mysterious, but there was no supernatural or spiritual explanation for it. This all changed in the Eon of Osiris, when the concept of the death god and the afterlife were conceived. It is here that we get the name for this eon, Osiris, not just because he is a god, but because he is also a god of death. Then finally we have the Eon of Horus, the current Eon of Man, which only started up in the last century or so. It is a period of individuality, with an emphasis on what could be summed up as spiritual self-discovery. The name is from the god Horus, who is the son of Isis and Osiris. Now we can finally get back to talking about ponies, but with our rough understanding of what the eons are and what they entail, we can rate how Equestria fits onto this at the time of the show. This is all assuming, of course, that another world such as Equestria would progress just like ours. But it does make this video a lot easier to assume that this is so we're gonna roll with it. Right off the bat, I'm going to rule out the Eon of Horus. This is because the Eon of Horus places an emphasis on individuality, and this show is about friendship, which is more collectivist than individualist. This is also because this particular eon involves trying to figure out what is called your true will. Typically this can be done by invoking your holy guardian angel, though such a process is something which, unless I'm mistaken, is usually done alone rather than with the power of friendship, so to speak. This topic gets interesting when you stop to consider whether or not it fits into the Eon of Isis or Osiris. We all know they're at least in Isis, but if you ask me, they're in a transitional phase to the Eon of Osiris. Examining it on a level of masculine and feminine divinity, it should be understood that the question of divinity of certain characters has been something of an up-in-the-air discussion that can go either way in a lot of cases. Alicorns seem to have jobs and the same reverence as gods, at least on concept, but the lines are blurred when you look at how powerful certain ponies are who are not alicorns, or other powerful beings who are not even ponies. We are now roughly stepping into the territory of agnosticism here simply because one would have to define what deity is. Here the alicorns will be included as fitting into the classification of deity in the context of MLP, given that they typically embody some sort of important quality or vital cycle of sorts. The part where this becomes confusing is when one notices how blurry the lines are. It is hard to say if, assuming the above, alicorns are divine by equestrian standards, then is it possible for non-alicorns to be considered divine by their standards as well? Entities like Discord and Tirek are powerhouses even when compared to alicorns, and then you have other questionable variables thrown in as well, such as Starswirl, Sombra, and possibly Shining Armor. But one has to ask the question if they are being viewed as divine beings in this context, or merely as powerful yet non-divine beings. This may seem like an odd thing to say, but there are actual pantheons that have done this. The Nordic pantheon, to name one, had blurry lines between the Vanir, who were considered powerful but not usually considered gods, and the Asir, who were considered gods despite some gods, such as Frey and Freya, for instance, being 100% of Vanir descent and still thought of as gods. Another thing to consider is that just because entities like Tirek and Discord exist, does not make them part of the recognized divine. Similarly, in the Aeon of Isis, the sun, the sky, and death were things that existed, but simply had no supernatural recognition or explanation. In other words, just because the sun, the sky, and death were things that technically still existed, it does not mean that they were recognized, and therefore does not mean they have advanced to the next Aeon. Some may look at Celestia, and in this context may look at her control over the sun and believe that because she controls it, then they would at least somewhat be in the Aeon of Osiris because the sun is recognized here, but this is not the case. There are goddesses in other pantheons who control the sun, such as the Japanese goddess Amaterasu, and the Irish-Celtic goddess the Morrighan, to name a couple. The latter goddess is actually a personal favorite of mine as well. One may also look at how death is treated in Equestria, and there are only two things that might possibly tell us anything about it, and they don't tell us much. One is a blink and you'll miss it scene in Hearts and Hooves Day, and the other is Twilight's Ascension in Magical Mystery Cure. In the former scene, we don't exactly know what a funeral in Equestria entails. If it is the appealing to some sort of being with dominion over death, passage to an afterlife or similar, then that would count as having a spiritual answer for death. If, on the other hand, the funeral is only about consoling the grieving loved ones or sincerely hoping, in the vast unknown, something good will hopefully happen to them, then in that case it is not really a supernatural answer to that question, and therefore they would still be in the Aeon of Isis when it comes to death. Then there is the scene of Twilight's Ascension, but like last time there is a lack of information, and worse is that there is nothing to say it really has anything to directly do with death, though some people may be thinking about it here, so I'll explore it. Some people have proposed the headcanon that Twilight died in her ascension, and that she was reborn, or have thought of the idea that the place Twilight went to was a spiritual plane related to the afterlife. While these are certainly interesting ideas, they are far too predicated on guesswork and headcanon than anything definitive. Again, like the funeral, only worse. However, there is one thing that may show that Equestria is on the road to the Aeon of Osiris, as I had proposed earlier, and it is actually with Discord. He may not be 100% redeemed, sure, but he is on the road to perhaps acquiring the recognition and admiration that one would attribute to the hypothetical divinities of Equestria, which is to say the Alicorns. If that were so, and assuming a supernatural answer for death was given, then perhaps we might say that Equestria would be on its way to entering a transitional period from the Aeon of Isis to the Aeon of Osiris. But as it stands, it still appears to me to be in the Aeon of Isis, going by what's been definitively given to me. Anyway, everyone, thanks for watching my video. I know I was away for a while because of some difficulties, but hopefully I should be back and available for more things more frequently. I may hopefully get the Q&A video up soon enough, hopefully. But beyond that, I hope everyone had a happy new year, and I wanted to thank everyone who subscribed to me and enjoyed my content, as well as thank you to all the wonderful friends I made. By the way, thank you all and see you next time.